putting people down there. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. No,
recording.
I didn't get it on the record, so I'd like to start over. So
Okay,
it is on the record.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's become a health issue, I think, with the rubbing their hands, wanting to declare a state of emergency on illnesses. But I don't like the fact that we put all that money, our taxpayer dollars, into that park, and it's 9 times out of 10 just getting trashed. I don't want the people not to be fed, but they cannot on a continuum use that park with grass. And the grass is laid bare around 6, I think, of those columns, just bare ground. And there were a lot of tax dollars went into restoring that. And if the city can't be a little more proactive in pursuing that matter and making it clear that the breakfast people have plenty of other locations, that Whitaker does not need to be the one stop for all, that it needs to be, they need to provide those breakfasts throughout the town, not just the one spot. I've noticed an increase in the graffiti. And I'd like the graffiti, if they do murals, I like those murals to be calming. I don't want this jagged lions and all this that kind of creates seemingly a violent atmosphere. And I know people are probably going to accuse me of wanting to censor. No, I want a pleasant, calming environment when I go to my parks. And I think that the city would do well to pursue those that damage the parks, to pursue that on a financial basis, that people cannot just go into public parks and cause damage and ruin our recently restored grounds there without their insurance, their liability insurance, picking up the tab to restore it and to fence it while that grass gets a fair shot at growing up again. And I'd like to see the city declare a moratorium on putting blankets or sleeping bags on any grass out there because it smothers over repeated use. I'm just tired of seeing that park just damaged to the length that it has been with the persistence of the breakfast people. And I know the businesses around at that end of the street are selling out. They want nothing to do with it because it's been, um, it needs to be addressed and it needs to be restored by the parties responsible in causing that damage. Hence, that's why the city requires a liability policy and insurance, I believe. I would like to think so they have some way to financially restore the mess, the damages that have been caused there. And that's it.
Thank you, Janet. Go ahead, Travis.
I'll try to keep it short. That's what I was going to bring up was Washington Jefferson Park. At this point, every column is just about every column is surrounded by trash hordes of stolen grocery carts and open drug use. I've got that all documented. I've submitted many online complaints. They never, the city of Eugene Parks never actually addresses the issue. And I want to add that I believe that if they were to soil sample the grounds of that park again, it would come back once more contaminated. They are contaminating our park. There's no way around it. And the grass adjacent, well, every side of the park, but especially on Jefferson side, the grass is hammered. It's no longer grass, it's mud. And I don't know what else to say besides they need to just close the park again. If they can, if they can reseed it, fence it, reseed it, and then allow it a couple of years to really recuperate. I believe it was in the 70s or 80s when they laid that sod originally, and that was healthy, really high quality sod. We are the grass capital of the world. There is no reason why that park needs to be a mud park. So I would like the city to address the contaminated soil and address the fact that that park is being misused, period. And one idea I had with, if they were to re-fence it and close that park down for renovation, rehabilitation, is maybe we could work with the mission to do a variety of artwork on the chain link. There's really cool artwork online if you look up chain link artwork, and a way to beautify the chain link so it doesn't just look like a cage and it doesn't look hostile. But one thing's for sure, and that is if we were to invite a bunch of city officials for a little picnic in the park, in that section of park, they wouldn't feel like it was a welcoming atmosphere. And the truth is, it's not a welcoming atmosphere. There's only one group of people that are welcome there, and it's people that associate with the activities that are going on there after dark. It's a hostile atmosphere. It's not safe. And at this point, the park is suffering irreparable. Well, it's not irreparable. It is repairable, but it will be costly to repair that park. So that's my piece. That's what I'm going to finish by saying.
Thank you, Travis. Stephen?
I would like to know whether we can come out from lockdown. That we've been locked down since the 11th. And we haven't heard the all clear yet. That's from the knife attack outside Oakshire.
Right.
Is he still running around? Is there any information about it?
I've got some direct, there was a police statement that was issued, and that was issued after I got a hold of the EPD and had a conversation with Melinda McLaughlin, who's the communications director, I believe is her title, of the EPD, imploring her to come forward with a statement. I know multiple people in the Whitaker, including an 82-year-old woman, that contacted me to let me know how traumatized she was. Over next to Sladden Park, there was a massive drone above her house yelling at the community to stay in place, keep their doors locked. And then the next day, it just kind of never reemerged in the news media. So the bottom line is, even with her press release, you kind of have to read between the lines, but he is not caught. He is on the loose. He is 5'6", blondish, dirty blondish brown beard with curly blonde mid-length hair, I believe was the description. So not a totally normal looking guy. I mean, most people in the world, I would say, are brown haired. So that's good. We have a chance of maybe finding him. But the bottom line is, yes, he's on the loose, and there were two women that were injured, and they were not gravely injured. They found some safety in their car after the attack, and if you look online, there's a couple of different statements, I think, on the EPD's website, and you can kind of get a better synopsis than I just gave you. But the bottom line is, he wasn't caught, and they never bothered to tell the entire Whitaker neighborhood that was fairly traumatized around 8 to 9 p.m. at night, that they indeed did not catch him.
Yeah, I read the police department reports, but nowhere in there did it say whether he'd been apprehended or not. So we were hoping that drone would come overhead and say, you can come out now, but we never heard that.
Yeah, I think it was insinuated. I basically tried to use reasoning with the EPD letting them know that, essentially if they have not caught this guy, and they're telling people that they need to shelter in place and lock their doors, then when are we allowed to come back out of our houses? They've got to give us some sort of information. And so that's what she came out with. I think if you read between the lines, she's at the end, she said something about the suspect is described as such and such, inferring that he had not been caught. But I agree with you.
All right. Thea, you've probably got some more information too, so.
So Travis has the best information on this particular issue. I am meeting with Chief Skinner tomorrow. It is the top of my list as to, I'm taking him around the neighborhood tomorrow afternoon. And that is one of my huge complaints, is that they came around with drones. The neighbors were terrified. And then there was no all clear or, be on the alert, whatever. There was no more information. It was just this, it was a very scary thing with police cars at all ends of the blocks. They were out here in the park in 3 different spots. They were up on First Street. They had their dogs out. They had drones out. So yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience. Now, do you want me to continue my parks and EPD update now? Okay.
Yes, please.
EPD does have a plan for neighbors feeding neighbors. We're not discussing it, but they do have a plan. I did speak to parks today. Okay. And I'm going to find out more tomorrow, and I will update the board tomorrow night. I spoke to Kelly Shadwick from Parks today, and Parks is actually sending new language to the city attorney on no more shopping carts in city parks at all, any city park. No more fires in parks. They are having an issue on how much stuff. They're trying to figure out how to do that language, because if you say you can't have a big pile of stuff, what do they do for the family that comes in with, they're having the picnic with the 3 babies, and then they've got the wagon. And so they're trying to figure out the language around that. I know that Park Ambassadors has said usable items in a park for a picnic, and to be reasonable. And I also said, are you going to enforce it? I said, it doesn't make any sense to do a rule if you're not going to enforce it. It has to be enforced. So, and I asked her how long the process takes. How long will the city attorney have it? What will come back? So there is a process. She says it's usually 2 to 3 weeks. The city attorney looks at it. It goes out to the public for a couple weeks. So hopefully before spring. I know that's a horrible thing to say. I've also recommended, I've heard from many, many businesses and many people that they think the park should be shut down and let the grass grow back. I've let them know that. And I said, we need to come up with a plan to make that area usable. There have been lots of suggestions of putting a fitness area around there. Okay, with like we have over here at the west end of Maury Jacobs Park, there's balance beams, there's chin-up bars. It's kind of a parkour course. And there was a suggestion of putting a little running track around the outside of that to increase running. Pickleball is out because the pickleball courts, that was suggested as well, but the pickleball courts that are over off of Polk by the Westmoreland campus over there, the neighbors have been very upset with the noise. I guess there's a noise when the pickleball flies across the net, and it's very irritating to people. So they don't want to put a pickleball court that close to residents again and have issues that way. So we need to get creative and think of a way to activate that. I know there was big request for a small and large dog park, but this dog park seems to be working. We still have nighttime patrols. They are moving anywhere from 6 to a dozen people every night out of the park. It's, but as Travis knows, all their stuff is still in the park, around the pylons. So, there's some issues around that. They have been in talks with neighbors feeding neighbors. I guess Wayne Martin is working with the church on Monroe and 8th, and the church has said they can feed there. Lisa Levinson came back to the parks and said, hey, we like the idea of the other places you've offered us. So Parks is now unsure if it's 2 different groups now or if it's one group. They're very confused. No one has gotten back to me. I did send a letter out and I've asked about warming fires and about what's happening with WJ, and no city employees got back to me on that. So that's why I reached out to Lisa today via phone, or to Kelly via phone today. And that's all she knew so far, is that the city has given them some other spots. One of them, I believe, is the Garfield spot. It's a safe sleep site. So none of our safe sleep sites have cooking facilities, and they could all use food. So that has been places that we have found for neighbors feeding neighbors to feed outside the doors, so that you don't have to be a member or a community member at the safe sleep site. You could be on the street and come get food if you need it. And I've made the recommendation that wherever they go, it's not one spot every single day. I've also let them know that there's another group that comes on Sundays and feeds up by the skate park. And there's also another group that's been coming in the afternoon and bringing hot beverages, it looks like. And it's been very cold out. I mean, I've reiterated, we don't ever want to stop people from being fed, but this is not working in the park. And Parks no longer wants to have this kind of activity in their park. So I will get more from Chief Skinner tomorrow. I have also reached out to our new mayor. I watched her City of the State address. If you have not done that, I highly recommend you watch it. She talks about how she wants the downtown corridor to be a business and residential friendly neighborhood. Does that sound like a neighborhood any of us live in? We were one time a walkable business resident neighborhood. We're not walkable right now because we don't feel safe. So she says she wants to talk with people and meet with people on their porch. So I have invited her to my front porch, and I have invited her to take a walk around the neighborhood. Margaret would like to invite her and Chief Skinner for the February meeting to see if we could get some at the mission about safety in our neighborhood, because we have a lot of young families that aren't feeling safe. We have a lot of people that aren't feeling safe on the bike paths right now. I do know that Chief Skinner has told me that he is looking at putting foot patrols back out, or bicycle patrols back out in the Whitaker like we used to have. And so when I meet with him tomorrow, I'm going to hold him to that. And I'm going to make sure that he doesn't back out of that, because we need to be proactive. And they need to know our regular unhoused people and then the ones that are causing issues. So, Julie, I'm on my phone. Did you ask if that was the State of the City address, or did you put the link up?
I put the link up. I have not
Okay.
watched it yet, but I will do that before our meeting tomorrow. And I appreciate you reminding me about it. So the link is in the chat, and you can find it by Googling Eugene State of the City. It's right there on YouTube. Thank you.
It was really easy. And it was interesting to watch last night, because she says she wants to be very accessible to people. So we'll see. I did write the city over the warming fires. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but there was a camp that was on Van Buren between 1st and 2nd on the west side, and parking came along and moved them, and they moved right next to Jerry and Waltz, and they had blocked the entire sidewalk. And then Saturday night they had a fire going, and Derek has cameras, and he sent it off to the chief and got the response, well, that's a warming fire. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, when the officers were at the end of the street, I went out. I ignored the shelter in place because it was at the other end of the street. I went out to see what was going on because my neighbors were texting me. And I said, are you guys looking for a bad dude? And he said, yes. And he gave me the description of a white male, the purple beanie and a blue jacket. And I said, well, you might check the camp next to the railroad tracks, next to Jerry and Walt's. They have a great big fire. And by the way, maybe you can ask them to put it out so that the whole neighborhood doesn't burn like LA or Blue River. And I said, but they do, that's one of our regular groups that lives in the neighborhood that cause a lot of issues. And they're doing a lot of drugs, and they're on camera right now doing drugs. And so officers did go up to that camp and they did get them to put the fire out. And then Derek moved them himself the next day. So I'm pushing hard on no warming fires. We have the Egan centers. The Mission has over 200 beds a night right now available. So we have places for people if they want to go. I know it's an issue if they have pets though. So I did talk to the Mission again about, hey, have you considered kennels? I know a vet that would be willing to help you get kennels set up at the Mission. So we'll see. It's frustrating, guys. I get it. Any questions?
Go ahead, Janet.
I think this is dragged on for what, 4 or 5 years. And I think two of the most principal issues, I think, are the carts. That's stolen property. I think that the police should be prepared to take those from them and return them to the stores or take care of that. Number two, the so-called warming fires. We don't need to have any more Los Angeles or Blue River, those fires. And most of our homes in Whitaker are older homes. They would go up like a wick. If one started, we would have casualties plus. And I think it's a poor practice, especially where we have a fire chief on the council. And I know he's done it. Thank you, Randy. He's spoken up to it. And thank you, Thea, for addressing it. But there needs to be an all-out ban on it. We don't need to have more fires. It's amazing to me that we've got about 4,000 of them countywide that are holding the majority of our of Lane County and the city in bondage over housing, which millions of dollars have been poured into this housing thing. And I don't see it getting better. In fact, I see it getting worse. And
Janet,
there's something
I don't mean to
something
interrupt.
really wrong with it.
I don't mean to
So
interrupt
those
you.
two things.
I don't mean to
I'm
interrupt
done.
you, but one of the things I would like you to tell your friends, tell your business people, they need to start writing city council. I have told them we are not comfortable going there, but they do.
Yeah.
There's the mayor city council. It goes to every employee in the city,
Yeah,
and keep it short and sweet. We want to feel
Yeah.
safe in our neighborhood.
yeah,
And the more letters they get, the better. And Randy Groves did respond to my warming fires because I called him out in the letter, and he did
Thank you.
respond because he was a fire chief.
yes.
We were very lucky when the apartment here on Railroad went up 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, right after Christmas, that the fire department was there within 2 minutes. And we were
Yes.
very, very lucky that they
Yes.
were not somewhere else in town, because we would have
Yes.
lost probably Emerald Village. We
Yeah.
would have lost the 2 houses next to that. So, but I encourage you to tell all your friends all over the city, not just in Whitaker, and businesses, start letting the city council know. And they are here. They're starting to hear that message. So
Yeah. Yep. I will encourage others to write to the council.
I do just want to clarify, I just looked up on the county website. The Mission has 17 beds available. There's another 20 or so listed from all the other partnering organizations. I can drop that link in the chat. So I want to be really careful with this, because I want to acknowledge the safety issue and the quality of life issue of this. But I also want to not be hyperbolic. We are not experiencing Santa Ana winds. We are experiencing an extended cold snap. I'm very happy to report, I don't know if you all saw that St. Vinny's is going to start having a staff operated pop-up shelter for days in which it's 30 degrees, when it's between 30 and 32, which is huge if it's going to be for more than consecutive days. And these are staff, it's not just volunteers. Like, so there's also an issue too that the city is pushing services to here into 99. With the closure of the front rooms, the places where people are accessing services are actually in large part around the park. That is where Buckley House is, and that is where their new big center is going to be built. It's where, you know, I don't want to throw any other organizations under the bus, but we looked at a building for Burrito Brigade, you know, for our Waste to Taste program there. And they are a public space. Parks are a public space. And if we move people out, like addressing the issue of drugs in parks, fires in parks, the trash in parks, but being homeless in a park, I hope that that's not the issue that we're trying to take. And I don't think that you are. I just don't want to like re-solidify around the difference
No.
between.
So Jen, my first thing is always trash, always drugs. Those are the two things that I personally think you should be able to have a drink in a park, but you know, that's just me. You know, the problem with having your drugs in the park is you leave your needle behind. That's not safe. You know, you have a drink, you leave your bottle behind. That's not safe. So, you know, if you have too many drinks, I should say. So I get it. No, it is trash. And it's the illegal behavior, the bad behavior. It's not, if you're just hanging out in the park, that's what parks are for. It's the illegal behavior. I just talked to the mission. So I'm confused by the numbers because I just talked to the mission and they had 200 the other night. Maybe because it's gotten so cold, they're starting to fill up. They're also doing a warming center as well, I'm told. So when it's getting this cold. So, and I know there's an issue. I've talked to several people. There's an issue with the bed count. They finally have a bed count app going, but not everybody's putting in the available beds. It requires a person to make sure the beds get in there. So that's still up for human error.
There are notes
And
on the page as to when it was most recently updated, and that 17 is from this morning.
from this morning. Okay, great. So, and then the other thing that everybody needs to know is that EPD has their own fund that one of their officers started a long time ago, and they will put people in a hotel overnight, especially when they come across families. And they have put them in hotels for several days and helped them get into the proper services, you know, because when you come across a family with several kids, the Mission or St. Vinny's isn't necessarily, or the Dust to Dawn is not necessarily a place that they can go. And so EPD the officers contribute to that fund. And then they put them in one of the hotels. They have a couple hotels around town that they work with. So that's nice to know.
That is. Julie had a question for you, Thea.
Okay.
More of a statement. Jen, I really appreciate that you're here. I really value this conversation. I think we're seeing a lot of different perspectives. I don't feel safe walking through the park all the time. I would not go there at night by myself, and I am not a small person. I know how to move with purpose. I don't think I give off a victim vibe, but I wouldn't feel great. I can do it, but I wouldn't feel great about it. And I don't appreciate trash, and I certainly do not appreciate drug use and assaults. But boy, I have a lot of compassion for being cold. I hate to be cold. I'm housing someone right now who used to live in her van, and I got tired of what I perceived as the eternal wait. I've known this woman 4 years. Has she done everything right? No, but I finally decided that the city wasn't going to help her and I could. I'd like to see more people, and I am not speaking of the volunteers that are here only, but all of us walk our talk. If we want to see more warming centers, we need volunteers. They need volunteers. Am I volunteering there? No, I'm not. I could be. Maybe I will. I guess I just want to say I appreciate everybody's views. I really feel for the people who are cold. I don't like fires in front of my house. I've had them. And I've had EPD tell me, if it gets out of control, call us, but we're not going to roll anyone. And I don't like that feeling either. So anyway, I guess I'm just talking. I'm not asking any questions, but thank you, Janet. Thank you, Jen. Thank you very much, Thea. Thank you, Travis. I don't have the solution, but I agree that we need to do better as a city. That's all I got.
We also need to really work on the streamlining of getting people into housing. It's become big business, and Homes for Good has taken over the big business.
Mhm.
I'm sorry we lost Jen, because I was going to ask her about that. Because it is very hard. The waits, you know what?
I think Jen will be back. She has an unstable internet connection.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
she texted, she said she's trying to join again. so.
Okay, good. Because I would like to ask her if that's something the WCC and the health committee, if we could figure out how to help streamline this process, because it is absolutely crazy for people. They're waiting, months and years, and I know that Andrew took over for Dan Bryant from Emerald Village. He's now running that. And Emerald Village they're expanding. They're expanding their tiny home program, and it's working. It would be amazing if we could get something like that in that vacant lot that used to be a parking lot. A grant that would help pay to build more tiny homes.
We've got that on the agenda. There's a really interesting Robert Johnson Foundation grant. It's reimagining zoning for health equity, basically. And so that's later in the night, but I'm really excited about that because that's exactly where I'm thinking. It's just like expand on Emerald Village in a way that can do the most good with the smallest amount of space for people. So
it's interesting because they do land trusts is what they do. As my sister's looking into it. My sister's like trying to figure out how to do something like that. She's like, she wants to put her money where her mouth is and
Yeah.
see about creating some kind of land trust and doing something similar to that. So we'll see.
that would be good.
Hey, Jen, I have a question for you.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, we got to stop meeting on the last day of my data cycle, apparently.
Yes. Or you're just going to have to come to one of our houses and be on our line. Is the process for housing is just horrendous. Is there a way to streamline that?
So, I think the folks who kind of do it best, if I had to pick, would be shelter care. They have a lot of pretty good and various leveled interventions. So I don't want to say it's just the need. And then nobody wants, years ago they were going to build, Looking Glass was going to build a youth boys home in Bethel, and folks didn't want it there, and then folks didn't want it here, and folks don't want it near campus. And, so it's, the hard part is providing a large enough supply that it is impactful without it being high density in a way that keeps those impacts going. I think that, in your conversation with the mayor, I really worry about the city and the county and everyone's definition of what qualifies as affordable.
Exactly. I'm like, I keep hearing the word affordable, and I've asked, what do they consider affordable? No one will tell me what they consider affordable.
Yeah, it's like $1,200 a month for a studio because it's market rate. It's just that we actually have so much housing that is, any housing we have that's potentially available is above market rate, but our market rate is very high.
I'll tell you what affordable is in a simple short line. It's a 3-digit number, 3-digit, not a 4, not a 5-digit monthly payment, a 3-digit number in simple terms. I don't want to be paying anything over 1,000. And I've done my best in my own life to always try to budget or to find my house. I was fortunate to find it 30 some years ago. But that's the key, I think. People can't get up in those 4 digits anymore. A 3-digit number for your shelter space. And another thing I've observed at the Santa Clara and River Road neighborhood meetings, they talk about housing, low income housing. And what it comes down to is they're kicking out all these dollars for shelter. Now, in my dictionary, there's a vast difference between a shelter, like you can come and stay here, but after the cold snaps over, out you go. We need to get away from that and get into those 3-digit housing affordability for people that they can feasibly get into a place of their own and not being told after the cold snap, out you go again. Everyone strives. The American dream is to have a place of your own. And unfortunately, the national leaders, there's been a lot of grifting done in the price of housing. I've never seen housing cost so much as it has lately. But that's the key. People ask, what is low cost housing? It's 3 digits, 3-digit, not a 4, not a 5. 3-digit.
I think also any way that we can incentivize additional landlords to accept vouchers and enroll in programs, from a policy level. And thank you, Jen. I think that's a great shorthand. If you're gonna own more than 15 rental units, you have to accept voucher programs or something. I think there's a huge, we have the really, really visible problem of the drug addicted, unhoused that are, the ones by the 7-Eleven by my house and the 7-Eleven by everyone's house. And, the thing that people kind of think of as the problem. But there's a lot more homeless people who are right on the edge of losing their housing. And so the more we can do to not add to that 4,000 people a night sleeping unsheltered in our county, and keep people in their homes, and then keep the kind of marginalized, that's going to free up more space. So that way, then the shelter beds can be utilized in a way that maybe they can get connected with services that they need, and, all of those great and lofty goals. But not every landlord has to. You have to actually enroll in it, because I looked into it for here, and it's like, I think I would have had to put in a ramp, and so maybe that was some of the housing improvement grant funding things, like maybe not even just for people who are, living in the house, but if we wanted to work with landlords to be like, will you take Section 8 if we help you do this improvement, to make it an accessible apartment?
So that is some of the issues that around Section 8, because I've had a Section 8 tenant years ago, and my fourplex, there are so many things I would have to go in and do, and ramps are one of them, to make them, and widen doors, and there's certain things I have to do, not all of them, but some of them. And the other issue with Section 8, now it may be better because it's been a while since I've had it, is that when you do you do a yearly inspection with them, and I had issues with their inspectors where the place wasn't livable because the person living there was not keeping it clean. And I had to say, and the inspector was like, "Oh, this is okay." And I'm like, "No, this is a duplex and you're creating issues for the neighbor next door. You're bringing rats into the place or whatever, And so we had some issues around that. I think it's gotten better. I was actually thinking of looking into it for my apartment that's coming available here soon, just to see what they have. Instead, what I've chosen to do is help people that someone else wouldn't rent to. They're not going to make it through a property management company, but I can help them personally. They wouldn't qualify on paper, but their references qualify, and their work qualifies. And so you just take chances as a landlord. But Jen, that's a great idea with the grant that's coming up, Doriandra, is to see, hey,
Yeah.
what do we need to do?
Right. That's a really good point. Looks like Travis has a hand up.
Yeah, I've actually had a personal experience that did not go well with shelter care, in that they essentially, as far as I could tell, gave dishonest information about the person moving into my house. And the person that moved into the house ended up being a very low barrier lady with a lot of different variety of disabilities. Um, I believe that she was drug free at the time of move in, and possibly even through the living situation. But within a year, uh, so much damage was created that even double the deposit. That part of their incentive was, well, we're going to back this with double deposit. Um, they basically pushed someone that was fresh off the street into one of my units and ruined the unit. I had to literally paint the entire unit. They smoked in it. The boyfriend moved in. They were supposed to have somewhat of an agent or a handler of sorts to kind of. They didn't have good living skills, just normal living skills. But as far as I could tell, they had no oversight, and they used this move-in boyfriend as the caretaker. It was a disaster, and it was probably illegal. I didn't want to make it a legal issue because that makes a mess. But I ended up taking it in the pants for thousands of dollars. So I will tell you, firsthand experience, the whole idea of getting a landlord to buy in is a great idea. But essentially forcing a landlord to, or a property owner, whatever you want to call it, to accept a voucher of sorts. This was not Section 8. This was a voucher from shelter care. Is not right. It's not right, and it's probably not legal. And I think we're going, not to be pessimistic, but I do think there are going to be some legal issues around housing, especially forcing housing with people that are low barrier. They are liabilities. People without living skills are liabilities to a structure. So that's going to be a real mess when we go to try to figure out where all the people without normal living skills are going to be placed. That being said, I do have a Section 8 person that has been living in my home for a long time, and it's pretty smooth. It sometimes gets a little hard to deal with. If issues come up, it's hard to have that second level to deal with, which is essentially the HUD who is giving out the federal funds. So, yeah, I think more people should look into Section 8, but it is not as straightforward as receiving one check from one person. So that's it.
It looks like we might have lost Doriandra briefly. I don't know if we have more people in the queue. We could talk a long time about Section 8, but we're already behind time. Do y'all mind if we, we can't move on to anything until Doriandra comes back. She was going to talk about healthy homes.
I will share that the mission crew that's going to be working on the healthy homes came and helped me today. Because they've been going and picking up trash around the neighborhood, and it was still 34 degrees out this morning. So they came and helped me because I'm getting my apartment ready. And I had mixed feelings in the sense that I felt like, I shouldn't be taking this help. But then I thought, well, this is a good way to vet the new crew that's coming in. They were amazing, 5 people. They helped me get my bedroom and 3 closets painted. They helped rip out I'm having to replace all the flooring. So they got all the carpet strips tacked up. I have to replace all the doors and all the door jambs because the cats that were in the unit shredded the door jambs. And so everything has to come out. I'm gutting it down to the drywall. And they came in and really helped out. They were pretty amazing. And one of the gentlemen, they were from the R3 the young lady was from the R3 program. I forgot what program he was in, but he just got his carpenter's license. So he's all licensed. So I said, please drop off your card. I will spread your name around the neighborhood. Because he did amazing work. I mean, he painted a closet and one bedroom in about the same amount of time other people were like working on other things. He was very, very fast and very good. And he's like, this needs to be level. Is it okay if I level this up? And I'm like, go for it. So that was pretty amazing. So if you have neighbors that are needing stuff while we're waiting to get this grant going, Doriandra is looking for inside jobs. I know they last term's group, and it's called a community service group. So, and they also said, just reach out to the mission. So Jen, you might reach out to them and see if they can help you. I don't know what your relationship is with them, but with what's going on at your place now, because they're looking for work. They don't want to, they're bored. You know, the weather's kind of cold. So
I have it from, thank you, Thea. And they were so happy in November. I don't know if who all was in person or online at the November meeting, but the representatives of the R3 program, the people who attended our meeting, not the participants, were thrilled. They talked a lot about how happy they were to be contributing. And
They're so great at the park cleanup too.
Yeah, they're
like
nice
when
people. They're glad to be doing that. I'll tell you that Doriandra tells me that her computer gave a large spark. I don't know if that's a virtual spark or an actual spark, and died. She's trying to get on. I asked her if we should all exit the meeting and re-enter. She's a little bit surprised that the meeting is still going on without her, and frankly, I am too. She's trying to come back on. I'm monitoring by text. You can write what I know about the current state of the Healthy Homes Grant on a small piece of paper, but I do know that it is still on. We're trying to comply with the insurance requirements. We're not trying, we are complying. We're figuring out how to comply with the insurance requirements, and it's expensive. And one of the reasons is because of the potential for people coming in contact with asbestos and other things that are going to be in old homes. So the WCC needs to have insurance to cover any potential problems or damages resulting from things like asbestos for the homeowners and for the workers. But Doriandra has worked really hard to sort that out. Hey, Janet, go ahead and talk. I'm not prepared to run this meeting. She better be coming back. Oh, here she is.
Lady
Well,
of
I
the day.
just wanted to say with asbestos, all the old houses I've worked on personally, if it's best not to disturb it unless it is actually an impediment. It's best to let it be, because the structure of asbestos is like little anchors, and when you go ripping it up and doing that, unless you go through the process of bagging your house and going, it's very expensive to get rid of it. But when you're dealing with asbestos, I was always told, don't disturb it. If you can go over the top of it or whatever.
And you're right, Janet.
Yeah.
Sorry,
'Cause it's
Doriandra. I was like trying to
yeah.
take up time and speaking to
So-
what little I know about the insurance issue, but I know that we're over time and we're back to you on Healthy
Okay.
Homes.
There
Thank
she
you,
is.
yeah. And I'm sorry, that
Yeah.
was really terrifying. All of a sudden there was just like this huge spark where the computer, the power cord goes into the computer. It made this hideous sound, and I just like, oh my God, and the whole thing went black. So it came back on, which is a miracle. I unplugged it, but I don't know, that was terrifying. But yeah, power to the computer that it's back on. So okay. I guess we're still recording. I don't know. Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, all my links are gone that I had for us to look at. So it may take me a minute to catch up. But yeah, that's right. I just want to thank you all. That was a stunning conversation. I know we went way over, but this is the kind of like forum that we need to really bounce incredible ideas around. So really good stuff here. Yeah, so Healthy Homes, right. As Julie was saying, we just hit a huge wall with the requirements that the Department of Justice needed on this grant. It was frankly staggering. You know, we always carry great insurance for all the work we do in the community and for everything, you know, that we touch. But this was a bevy of new policies. And so it literally took about 3 weeks to try to juggle them and understand how they would fit with us. And so I'm finally to the finish line. Tomorrow we'll go over it more with the board so that the board really understands the scope of what's happening. But bottom line is it's an enormous cut out of our work or our funding, which over the term, it's about 25,000 over the 3 years. So but, you know, the grantors are beholden to the Department of Justice, so it's just what we have to do. But I do think that when I came back on, I was hearing Janet speak a little about asbestos, which was one of the huge points of this because all of our houses in Whitaker are so old. And if you just, you know, trouble that substance, it can cause an incredible issue. So that was the huge nut to crack, was the pollution insurance. So as we are standing now, it's, you know, that was also hard too, is that they wanted us to have a set list of houses we were going to work on before we could get the pollution insurance, but we couldn't get the grant started and put applications out until we had the pollution insurance. So we had to get kind of a blanket policy, which will keep us protected in any event. So yeah, the timeline is getting real close here. Once the board votes on these new additions to our indirect expenses, we should be looking at funding in about 3 weeks out. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, you know, because sometimes it takes them an incredible amount of time, but it bounces between the Office of Procurements and Contracts back to us and such. That Jen knows all about this with grants. You're just kind of like, oh gosh, please. So when it finally comes, we will be needing to hire a program coordinator to kind of, you know, sort through some of the data and work between myself, the homeowners, the contractors. So we'll be in a big new phase of growth and opportunity at that time, finally. And, you know, with the conversations with the contractors, you know, this comes at such a bummer time in terms of weather and inclement. So I think my biggest question, which I was really hoping to bring to the committee for feedback, was like, how do we target the projects themselves? You know, there's, if you remember, there's 3 kind of pillars of work that we're going to be doing. One is health and safety, and that includes mildew remediation. It includes reduction of allergens in the home, and protection from climate change, which would include the scope of, you know, getting rid of old funky aluminum siding windows and doing good double pane insulation, windows, doors. That's one section. Then the other one is for increasing the accessibility for folks with special needs or wheelchairs, whatnot. So it's building the ramps, it's adding the grab bars, it's widening the doorways so wheelchairs have an easy way access. And then, you know, then there's the third pillar of energy efficiency. So this is where we're thinking about, you know, taking out old HVAC systems, putting in mini splits, so on and so forth. So I'm struggling because, you know, when I'm starting to do the intake forms and I want applicants to have the whole list of what they want, you know, what we can do and let them select. But, you know, when we think about possibly tariffs getting higher or maybe the price of equipment to get higher, do we categorize those 3 pillars and do them maybe 1 per year? Or do we just go for it and trust that the contractors can be jumping back and forth? Oh, thank you, Joanna, for coming. Thank you for letting us know you got to hop off for ham radio. Appreciate your work.
Oh,
See you
yeah.
later. Thank
One
you.
of these days I'll get you to one of those meetings. It's called a tech and training net for people
people who are new to ham radio.
All right.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys are doing an amazing job. I am so impressed.
Thank you, Joanna. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, yeah, go ahead, Stephen. Oh, you're muted, dear.
When you and I talked about this many months ago, one of the pillars I thought could belong
Yeah.
in this.
Link not on here.
Let's see.
Belong in here would be earthquake preparedness, assessing people's foundations to make sure that the piers are connected to the foundation blocks, and recommending remediation that would make the home more secure. The reason I was suggesting this, I did this on a couple of places in California that I lived. You crawl under the house, and then you, where the piers not connected to blocks, you connect them, and then you put like basically plywood between the different piers to stop them moving relative to each other. That's something that I no longer can really do, but it means crawling under homes. And there are contractors who specialize in this, and they would be able to assess this, and it could be it would apply to people, to homeowners, or to people who own property, and it could also have some kind of focus population, like people, seniors or low income or whatever. So yeah, earthquake preparedness was one of the pillars I thought should be on this.
I so agree with you, and want you to know that when interviewing all the different contractors and pulling in the price data for the repairs that were feasible in this project, it really became clear to me that if we started into foundation or structural work, we'd greatly minimize the amount of houses we could address. So it became kind of a, what can we do with this money, the greatest good? And so that's why the projects were chosen also for the contractors that were familiar with the Whitaker, and so none of them were, willing to do that, and did advise that it could be, we could end up spending 20 to 30,000 on one house and then we would reduce many different applicants from receiving any care. So unfortunately, we're stuck with the three categories, and that way we can, the life of the grant, the 3 years, I've allocated, we have 250,000 every year that we'll be able to spend, and with that, we'll hit about 25.9 houses with a little wiggle room. So that way, our target is 80 houses repaired in those in the categories that we could afford. So good point, but maybe next round, because there is going to be multiple funds and more rounds. So at some point we could possibly address that.
It could include preliminary, not the remediation work, but just the inspection. An inspection program would be a low entry to that pillar.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. I think it was Thea had your hand up next. Yeah.
So, kind of two questions. One, is the grant going to allow you to tie into the heating and the eWeb grants that replace windows, insulation, and heating? So like if Alpine Heating is doing something, they'll offer you a grant. So will people be able to use two grants so that it spreads this money further?
It's an excellent idea. Normally you can't braid things like that because this is so income requirement based. Has a real strict things. So like I'm not sure how eWeb is doing theirs, but I have discussed with the contractor team that's going to do those energy efficient upgrades that maybe potentially we could, as an organization, utilize some of the rebates. So because when you put in, I mean, for not us, but for the homeowner themselves. So
yeah, because they're generally not income based. So And then my second question, because LA just had all these fires, do you have contractors lined up? Because we are going to lose some of our contractors to LA.
Yeah, it's true. I know. My hometown there where I raised my kids for 14 years, and the ranch we lived on and everything burned down to the ground in Altadena. So yeah, I had 5 friends that lost properties, businesses, horses, all kinds of things. So yeah, that did occur to me. And I also feel like, when folks are talking about where they're going to go, I mean, I feel like we're going to have a lot of climate change refugees, and our housing situation here is going to get even worse because so many people come north. But okay, let's see. I think it was,
If Stephen mutes, there will be less feedback. Stephen, if you can mute.
oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. And then Travis, I believe you were next in the queue.
Actually, I think Julie was.
Oh, forgive me. Okay, Julie.
But
Okay, so I have a couple questions, Doriandra. When we first talked about this grant, we talked about creating a rubric for selecting people, and also about the memorandum of understanding that needed to be written for homeowners who are landlords. That's what I'm trying to say, because we don't want to exclude renters from having the benefits of having the dwelling they live in improved, but we do want to prevent landlords from exploiting this grant by using the grant to have their structure improved, and then either raising the rent or kicking those people out and re-renting at a much higher rate. Has that step happened? I know you've been working so hard on this. Maybe this has happened already.
That is in a list of things. I have like a memorandum draft written, and it's one of the things that we'd be passing to our lawyer for guidance and clarity. And again, just there's so many things we just don't have the money to do until we get funded. So yeah, it's in the queue, and
Okay.
I'm super excited about that because I imagine Sarah from Clear Compass may then kind of look at real estate law and be able to give us the best guidance. So yes.
So it's sort of that chicken and egg situation. Is we need the money before we can figure out how to spend the money, but we need to figure out how to spend the money partly to get okay.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Yes.
As far as what you're talking about, like whether to do all of the accessibility stuff one year and all of the, unless there's a huge economic benefit, it seems like respecting the climate that we have here and shifting with the weather makes the best sense to me. I'm no construction contractor, but I have been involved in a number of renovations. And for example, right now is not when you really want to do your roof or really your windows, because as the resident, that would be pretty miserable to be living in a house that had the windows ripped out, even if they were replaced the same day. So maybe accessibility stuff would make better sense at this time of year, but maybe there are economic benefits to outweigh that idea. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the way I've been seeing it is that we wouldn't want to parlay people's opportunity to imply, like for instance, Janet's neighbor needs windows now, but like, why would we have that person wait an entire year when we're stuck on doing one section? So like the contractors wish that we would do it in this easy format where everything in one category gets happen 1 year. But then, for instance, Janet's neighbor is going to have to wait an entire year, go through all the seasons, deal with smoke and the heat and the cold. And so it just feels like in terms of health equity, we just have to throw every angle at it and just do it all at the same time all the way through. So
kind of a triage situation, and sounds like what you're talking about.
exactly. Yeah, well said. Okay, thank you, Julie. Now Travis, right?
yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Were you kind of alluding to putting a cap per household, so that you could get to that kind of 80 household number, or so how are you thinking that would work in terms of, because I know, you're going to run into a house with aluminum windows and baseboard heaters. And what that person really needs is vinyl windows, double pane vinyl windows, and updated heat source.
Right.
And the two of those things together in, let's say, 1,000 square foot house with, 15 windows, or whatever it's got, that could easily go above $20,000 to $25,000 just to do those two things.
Right.
So would you just say each household or each job is allocated this amount of money? You can pick windows, or you can pick heat ductless heat.
Great question. And yeah, that was a big tackle trying to understand how this would lay out. The way I've set the deliverables for the grant is not based on money per house. It's based on 20 HVAC system upgrades across the board. So say, again, Janet's neighbor or the person you just described that needed the windows and the heat, those two projects would stand separate and they would go into the deliverable categories that they belong to. And so if we end up spending the 25,000 on that one house, it's great because we're matching our deliverables in terms of the 20 homes that need the HVAC, the 30 homes that need the upgraded windows and doors.
So
Does
that's what I was trying to get to. So
Yeah, does that
essentially, we're not really talking about 80 homes. We're talking about 80 deliverables. So some homes might get 3 deliverables.
exactly? Yep.
So
The target is about 20. Yeah, exactly. It's about 80 over the 3 years, but some places will get more work. Exactly.
yeah, because I will say that I think you're smart just not wanting to go there with structural type jobs.
Right.
However, a lot of times with windows, you're going to deal with contractors' mistakes of the past where they didn't flash them. They didn't flash them accurately. The paint and the caulking failed, and so you've got rot. And so you take that window off, you find the sills rotted, and then you take the sill off, and you find the studs are rotted. Take the studs off, and then you got it all the way down to the bottom plate, and you're going shoot. We got a remodel going. And so that's really what you're going to run into. And across the board, I would say that's what you're going to run into, except for things like heat pumps. But what you're going to run into that's the missing component with heat pumps is you're going to find a lot of houses in the Whitaker neighborhood, and I know this is what I've done my whole life, that have outdated panels. And a panel update and replacement is not just a plug and play. Sometimes it is. Some electricians or some houses are set up where you can pull the panel and you literally can reconnect all those wires that were run into the panel right where it was, reflash it, call it good, call it $3,000, $4,000. But sometimes when you pull that panel off, the wires aren't to code enough where they feel safe connecting those back in. Then you've got an electrical job. So then you're tearing apart sheetrock or fishing. I'm just saying everything that you're going to be offering has a serious potential to not even be able to really be applied to a house without doing something else that is required. So I'm not, again, I'm just throwing it out there. There's a good chance that you're going to find, even if you can get all these deliverables, the amount of units when it's all said and done isn't going to, it could possibly not be that great of a number. One house in simple speak, one house could easily suck up $40,000-$50,000 every time. If we're doing windows, if we're doing panel replacements, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. Yep.
So
I totally understand. Yeah.
throw it out there.
Yeah, my dad was a contractor growing up, and I know it's a can of worms. You open one simple thing and it just goes on and on. So yeah, that's funny. Travis, will you apply for project manager? Yeah, just put that in there. It's a great idea.
You're looking for work, Travis. That's a possibility.
That would be great because yeah, this is a lot. Let's see, Janet and Jen, and forgive me, who did it first? Guess Jen
Yeah,
said.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead. Okay.
If that's okay, if Jen needs to go, wants to go first, that's okay too. You're okay? Yeah, Travis addressed that very well. He's right. A lot of these older houses, and you get in and you think you're going to do this, and it becomes a nightmare. So having someone that's very savvy on assessing what the needs, what the homeowner is suggesting, what the needs should be, could be very different from what you're actually able to do in order to meet that 80 deliverables. I'm glad Travis clarified that because a lot of it is in understanding the terms of your grant and then how you process that out to folks that are interested in getting help. So what I was going to say, now that Travis has clarified that piece of it, that it's not necessarily 80 homes, but 80 deliverables.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, I think the focal point would be to kind of identify things. My suggestion is not to put your total focus on this, but a huge piece of it. eWeb. eWeb is prepared to raise our rates again. And I don't know about others, but I'm marginalized on my income and what I can pay for heat. I'll turn it off onto 50 degrees if that's what it takes to get me through the month. And I think there are a lot of people out there, and there are simple fixes that would have a big impact with less troubleshooting, do I call it, what Travis brought up,
Mhm.
is like weatherization of your doors or windows, I think are usually an easy fix unless, of course, you run into the dry rot, improper flashing. He made some very good points about this. So I think in putting together a template or a rubric of those that qualify, also put together a rubric of items that are could be addressed if you run into an applicant that their help, what they wanted, is like the panel box. We can't go there but we can do this. Your doors need weatherized. We can do this. What I guess what I'm trying to say is have a backup if you run into a situation with an applicant wanting a project done, but it's economically just not feasible in order to get the deliverables out there. So I'm sure you have your eye on that already, but I thought I just throw that in because that will be a huge piece. And I would think a lot of it hopefully is to get many, I know there's a cap of 80, but it'd be nice I'm sure you're striving to meet that 80 deliverable and to reach as many applicants that are subscribing to the program. So, yeah,
Thank you.
I'm glad Travis was here tonight and brought up those issues.
Me too. Thank you both.
And Stephen, I think we did that for a while. I had a business called Mole Man where we actually went under the houses to excavate out the dirt to give it that crawlable distance and then laid the visqueen. It's not a fun job, is it, Stephen, to crawl under a house? But anyway, that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Janet.
You make friends with spiders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some
Yes.
dead rats.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen.
I just wanted to ask what the income limit was. I have a couple of things actually. So it's not.
Say it again.
What the income limit?
It's 80% AMI or under.
80%
That's super
AMI.
generous. It's great.
Yeah, and I would also I think that you could maybe at some part of the application stage do a risk assessment, rating of how likely, like have the contractor be like, how likely is this going to go
Yep.
sideways? And
Yep.
if it's a 5,
Yep.
then, no go. And if it's a 1, then even just starting with those, because also the contractors, if these are all kind of the same sets of things that they're going to be doing, they're
Mhm.
also going to get, not that they're not great at what they do because they're professionals, but like they're going to get the hang of meeting the grant criteria, what's
Yes.
going to actually be impactful to the tenant, you know, those kind of things. I think after so start them off slow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then UWeb actually does have, like, so they paid for my heat pump. I got a grant for it.
Mhm.
And it is income based. And I don't know if they still have that one, but they do have some other ones. And so to the extent possible that if the project manager can look at, like having some knowledge of those programs as well,
Mhm.
to be like, okay, this did go sideways with the mold abatement. So maybe we can't afford to put it, or maybe we're out of heat pumps or something like that. But just kind of encouraging that person to know what some of the other options are,
Yes.
because maybe you can get that whole cohesive program, um, or the whole cohesive service to the individual. And then I think as far as rubric, yeah, points for being old, maybe being on six, like
Mhm.
just kind of giving up it, in the grant reviews that I've been doing, it's like preference points is
Mhm.
what they're called.
Right.
Um, and so it's just a way to prioritize, you know, so, and also having like the risk assessment be one of the preference points,
Right. Right. It's a
um,
really good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm happy to, like, if you get a rubric kind of together or something, I'm happy to poke at it and or help,
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. We could get coffee and yeah, I feel like the overlining goal of this grant is really for us is going to be so suited to keeping homes safe and sound and curbing the tide of the unhoused because there's so many squalid situations where people just give up paying rent and then they're evicted. So this has a lot of health equity attached to it, which is it's really
well,
excellent.
helping people stay in their homes, and particularly because you're letting renters be a part of this as well,
Hmm.
is going to be the number one thing that can at least stop the tide of the
Yeah,
unhoused crisis,
yeah,
because anytime if something gets flipped and a landlord has to put $20,000 into a thing to do all of this work themselves, then of course they're going to raise the rent, you
exactly.
know,
Yeah, exactly.
and some of the stuff is just wear and tear, after a year, you got to pay. My house is 5 years old after the fire, and the self-adhesive flooring, use extra glue, or never mop. Never, you can either never mop or you can use that extra glue. Otherwise, you're 5 years in and you have to redo the whole floors, as someone who lives 2 blocks outside of the Whitaker and needs electric work, but I
Right.
think that it's
Darn
a
it.
really great program, and I think that I think when you see those applications like start coming in, you'll also kind of know
Yeah,
like
how to do
what's.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very daunting. I mean, this grant, we are with the cohorts of like very esteemed organizations like Habitat for Humanity, there. So I tend to be kind of panicked about how we're all going to do this thing, but then I'm also getting comfort from the fact that I can reach out to some of the grant cohorts and see like what their application processes are like, and like try to do a lot of think tanking to see how this is done across the state of Oregon, because we're only one of 16 organizations that received this in the whole state. So it's so nicely allocated too. Once I saw it, it's really covering the whole state. So hopefully, there'll be a little bit of guideposts from how the big organizations are doing it. And, they all have that advantage because they just do this all the time, right? And this is a brand new thing for us, but we're going to get it done. So, all right. I'm being just an absolute terrible timekeeper tonight. We have gone over every agenda line. And so I apologize, but we've just been having incredible conversations. So anything else about healthy foams, or can we jump now into the Pacific Coast Intermodal Train project? Yeah, sound good? Okay. Stephen, are you still with us? I hope you're there. Did he wander away for tea?
I'm still here.
Oh, good. There you are. Okay. Yeah. Stephen was awesome and came on with me for this group. What were they called? The JPL or something. Do you remember their name? I can
I
look it
don't
up.
know, they're basically outreach consultants.
Yeah, consultants. And we met with them to kind of talk about our concerns for the Whitaker. And we were kind of dismayed because the input that we gave wasn't completely relayed. Concerns about pedestrian safety and our unhoused population were not relayed. But the big meeting was had. We both tried to log on to it. It was at the Coos Bay port, and the audio was horrible. It made some of our Whitaker Community Council audio fiascos look just fine. So I'd love for you, Stephen, to kind of talk, because you had really a good, let's see, I'll mute. Do you want to talk about our experience in that meeting?
Yeah, there were two meetings. One was the meeting with the consultants, and then there was the meeting of the Coos Bay port people. The meeting with the consultants, they were not getting complete input. It was more of a scoping for identifying stakeholders in the process, people who should be communicated with for during the permitting phase that they're hoping to start. Hi to the dog. Hi to doggy. They had spoken with a lot of people, and there's a lot of organizations listed on the report that they gave to the port, but they would meet with one or two people from a particular area and then check the box saying that they had consulted with the Whitaker Community Council, which they didn't. They were just the two of us, and we stressed that when we were meeting with them, that we were not speaking for the Whitaker. We were just communicating with them about our opinions on it. And but it did mean that by the end of their process, they had found a lot of stakeholders, most of them in the Coos Bay immediate area. We were probably could have been like furthest from Coos Bay than most of the other organizations they have spoken with. And then as Doriandra says, the subsequent meeting where the consultants were presenting their report to Coos Bay, the sound quality was awful. It was very difficult to hear anything at all, either that was being said by people commenting or even by members of the port authority, whatever it's called. Doriandra has mentioned the issues that we had expressed, and some of them were mentioned in the report, not as necessarily being from the WIT, but being on the list of issues that were raised by people that they had spoken to. I put in the opinion that Janet had when we spoke about this before, that we as a small city don't want to get in the way of economic development of another small town or city in Oregon or in on the coast. But nevertheless, the structural issues around the impact of mile-long trains 6 times a day, closing all the street crossings in Eugene. And if you want to get from one side of the town to the other, you have to go over to the Chambers Bridge or over the bridge on Ferry Street. So the impact on the logistics here, or finding a way for them to get from the Coos Bay line to the marshalling yards without having to back up into the main line and then back off over the crossing. So we weren't suggesting solutions to them. We were just trying to cover some of the issues that concerned us in our informal conversation. And as Doria Andrews has said, some of the really important things that we brought up didn't make it into the issues list on their report. But when they get into the permitting phase and the public outreach phase, there will then be the formal commenting period when issues can be addressed specifically from particular stakeholders, and that's when we'll need to weigh in. We did not hear that they had spoken officially with the city of Eugene, because if Eugene City does not know about the project or hasn't expressed any opinions or hasn't established any channels of communication with Coos Bay, the city needs to do this urgently, because it will be a citywide impact, and the Whitaker will be at in the bullseye on it. But we're not the only people in Eugene that are going to be heavily impacted by this. So it's important that the city gets on board, gets informed. So I don't know what the channel is communicating with the city on this, but it presumably impacts quite a number of city departments and probably the county too. They said to a couple of county commissioners, but they had not spoken to a commissioner who represents us, either of them, and had not necessarily spoken to commissioners that had expertise in this area. So Lane County and the city need channels of communication with the Coos Bay people on this. That's about all I had.
Thank you, Stephen. Travis, you're up.
Yeah, this is absolutely insane. And when I first heard about it, I believe Margaret kind of threw out a one-liner at a meeting in November. And I, of course, latched onto it and followed up with the city of Eugene, because I figured, well, as Stephen just confirmed, the city wasn't part of one of those interested parties. That's concerning. So I went ahead and emailed Katie Marwitz, who I've emailed over the years regarding the Quiet Zone project. And I inquired, and I let her know what I had heard and wanted to know what that meant to the Quiet Zone and how that was going to tie into their project. And her response on December 11th was basically, good morning. Your message is the first I've heard about a potential of the dramatic increase in track use. I will have to follow up with my partners at ODOT to see if it's accurate to be able to comment. As far as the project goes, we are still stuck in the same place of trying to get Union Pacific to be an active partner in the process. We are working with staff at ODOT to try to get it moving again, and our next check-in scheduled for the end of the month. You are welcome to check in again at the first of the year, and I'll be happy to share if and what I learn at that time. And I'm sorry I've been negligent to respond to her because I've had so many other things going on. But I will make a point to start that conversation up again tomorrow with Katie Marwitz, because it's extremely concerning to me that the city of Eugene has not been brought into this. And on top of it, I think that it probably would be beneficial for the city of Eugene to start creating a partnership with Coos Bay if they're going to be coming in, and see if they might accept some of the financial burden that it's going to be in order to create this safe crossing / quiet zone, which is, to me at this point, it seems like a pipe dream. But it is important that we push forward with this quiet zone, especially if we're going to get mile-long trains 6 times a day. I know houses anywhere near the railroad tracks, especially the older homes, the windows rattle. You have to stop your conversation in your yard, in your home at times, in order to hear each other. So it's concerning. Thank you, Stephen, for that update. That is shocking. I actually thought that maybe she didn't want to talk to me about it and was just making a good city excuse. But apparently, the Coos Bay rail line doesn't want to talk to Eugene. That's all I can surmise. But thanks. That's it.
Okay, yeah, just real quick too. I wrote to Francisca Elliott today, who was the person that we were coordinating with at JLA Public Involvement, and I asked her if there was any other further inputs available so that we would be able to have it for our meeting tonight. And she said, let's see, we have attended the Port of Coos Bay Board of Commissioners meeting last month, but just simply presented our findings as documented in the stakeholder feedback summary report and sharing them our draft community engagement plan recommendations. There are no specific items to report on from that meeting. Let me know if there's other information I can provide. Here's the kicker. The project is anticipated to fully kick off in late spring, but that schedule is determined by the Army Corps of Engineers, the lead permitting agency, so it may be subject to change. We'll be in touch with more information. So, yeah, this thing seems to be literally steamrolling right through the Whitaker. So,
Yeah, so
Jen.
has anyone, sorry, I'm like, yeah. So Friends of Bethel has actually been all over this for
Okay.
months and months and months.
Good.
And they presented at what I think would have been Lucy Venus's last city council meeting in a very organized way. And I thought made a great, I think that they might be far enough ahead of us on engaging in this and trying to deal with it. That
Great.
let's see what we can do to support them.
Genevieve,
they
that's
are-
it's a different topic, Genevieve.
It's also about the train coming through. It's the same trains.
Well, what the battle in train song is the fuel depot that they're trying to slam in there.
Right, but I think that isn't it related to that? Like, isn't it part of the expansion of this?
It's not. It's an actual
Okay,
huge
my bad.
fuel port. They are. I mean, it's almost worse than what we're looking at. But
I thought that this was tied to that. So my mistake.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not. These are.
So,
go ahead.
From a different perspective, though, the other argument that the other ally I think you can get at a governmental level then is actually the fire marshal. So because Eugene no longer has a hospital in town, the Chamber Street Bridge and the Ferry Street Bridge, the city is planning on doing this really stupid roundabout thing on Franklin Street to slow down traffic to 15 miles an hour, which will then not allow ambulance traffic going that way to be functional and in any imagination. And so the traffic impact that this is going to have with 6 trains coming through that are a mile long and ambulance routes to the hospital is, I think the fire marshal might just be able to say, like, you can't do this.
Yeah, that's
my
what
other best appeal. Yeah.
Yeah, that Stephen and I both brought that up multiple times. I said you're going to be having schools impacted, people needing life support, people needing yeah, it's preposterous. It really is stressful. I think Janet, were you next? Or Stephen had a quick point about this. Stephen, were you going to tag off?
Yeah, just to clarify, the trains will not just be coming through. The trains will have multiple cars, a mile long worth of multiple cars, that then need to be sorted out and allocated to trains that are leaving Eugene to go elsewhere. That's how the Coos Bay line works. So that there will be cars on the trains that come in from Coos Bay that are going out elsewhere. Currently, the way the Coos Bay line works, they come off the Coos Bay line onto the main line, pull clear of the intersection, then throw the points, the switch at the intersection, and then the train then backs up to the marshalling yard. So while the delay is while the train is waiting to clear the intersection before the switch is thrown and then backing up. That's what blocks traffic. It's that waiting time to clear the intersection. And that's what's going to be happening. So if you figure a mile from the Coos Bay intersection with the main line going east, how far does a mile go? I think it's probably well beyond Pearl and well beyond Ferry Street. So essentially it's in the entirety of downtown Eugene will have a train waiting to back up. Currently the trains are not a mile long, so it doesn't have quite so much impact. And it's currently, I think, just an early afternoon train, not all day or 6 or 12 times a day train coming in. So that's the big impact as far as I can see, the intersection with the marshalling yard from the Coos Bay line. And solving that is going to be a major issue with now that everything is built up. So it's the intersection with the Coos Bay line and the marshalling yard is the big issue here, as far as I can see.
I agree. Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, I think Stephen's got a good point. I think we've identified our concerns with this, what do we call it, intermodal or whatever, this train. Much like tribal people and their lands are very sovereign, so is the railroad industry. And they're a fairly unique animal, if you want to say, in dealing with them. And I can tell you, caution you that locals will have their place in this communication, but I would strongly urge Travis or anyone that wants to undertake it to reach out to the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA. And that's who I spoke to 20 some years ago when I tried to put through the quiet zone. I had a lot of opposition within the community simply because they didn't want to close down every other street from Blair over to High Street. So what I'm trying to say is that we can sit and talk about this, which is good, and it's got its place. But in my dealing 20 some years ago with the quiet zone and trying to get this launched off, I found out that you're going to have to go not just county and city, you're going to have to go federal, and you're going to have to go to the state and get the conversations from that point. And from that, the information is routed down to the local, the county, and the city because of the sovereign status of the rail industry. They can pretty much muscle us around anyway, unless you hold talks during the planning process, just like now that we're talking about things, issues that are going to come up. I can't encourage any, Travis, whoever, I'll get the phone numbers for Federal Railroad Administration and the sitting members at the federal level that deal with railway issues, concerns. I can get those numbers if someone wants to make the calls, or I'll make the calls. Whoever wants to undertake it, but it's going to have to start at a much broader, higher place, such as the Federal Railroad Administration, and being in touch with the committees that address this issue that we're facing in our small town of, relatively speaking, our small town of Eugene.
Thank you, Janet. That's a really good point. That's really important. And to Julie's point in the chat, and also Travis's, it's really, this is really nuts, and we are so far behind. And I think I've told some of you, I mean, this was such a shock. I was just checking our WCC email, and one day, I guess it was in November, and the subject line wasn't even like urgent. It just, I thought it was one of the many things that we get because we're, subscribed to all these different neighborhoods. And I mean, I read it and just like my jaw dropped to my floor. It was just like, this is, and it's so blindsiding that, I mean, Travis, the letter you've written that shows that the city is that they're so far behind too. And anyway.
If
I
could-
can't encourage that enough about getting that conversation launched, because there's a lot of not a lot, there's preliminary issues that the rail industry still has to address. And it sounds as though that has not even been started, because it sounds like they're just going to push this through. And there's been very little community local knowledge or know-how and how to do that. And I'm sure that they're violating a lot of those precursory, meeting with the neighbor type of events. So
Right.
that's why I encourage you, get a hold of at the federal level, articulate it, and talk to someone, ODOT in Salem. Talk to those folks at ODOT up out of Salem, because they're at the Capitol hub and they're in the know on how to harness this issue and make sure that the community standards are met and acknowledged by the rail industry, because they are a machine and they're very sovereign. So that's where I encourage to get started. Federal.
Thank you. Go ahead, Travis.
I just want to add that I mean, as much as I agree, sure, call some of the rail administration. I think actually the most important thing to do right now is to get the city and the county involved. If they're claiming ignorance on it, there's a good chance that they are actually ignorant on it, and there's also a good chance
They are.
that the Coos rail line checked a box by contacting the neighborhood association or associations that would be most impacted, or the only residential zones that would be impacted by the traffic. So they could just be checking a box by contacting the neighborhood organization, and really the what's happening is that the neighborhood organization at this point, by whatever rules they're following, might actually have the duty to bring this to the city in order to
Yes.
even make it a discussion. And so we need to 100%. I mean, I've already started it with the quiet zone lady, but this needs to go to council. We need to write emails to council and to the incoming mayor, and we need to make noise about it, because with all of the plan in progress and actually some money allocated to that quiet zone, they absolutely need to be part of this discussion. Because if we're going to go forward with a quiet zone, we now have a new partner that needs to be brought into the conversation, and ASAP.
And the rail industry is obligated to provide some of that funding for the opposition, if back 20 some years ago, because I actually made calls to private companies that actually do this type of work, that are very knowledgeable about bridging the differences and interfacing the community with the rail industry is proposing, and that of which what the community wants to see happen if they bring it to their town. So there are private companies to do it, and in part, the rail industry does have to provide some funding for because we're out of our league when it comes to the federal nature of the rail industry. So yeah, I think it's important to bring it to the city, because they, by golly, should have people that know how to get in touch and get this addressed.
So folks, I'm going to put I will work on this a bit in the morning. Travis, I'd love to work with you, or it might be something that we should bring up to the board meeting tomorrow night. And maybe we should get a formal letter written from WCC and do this, get this going. But just so people have it, in the chat, I've just put the YouTube for that Coos Bay Port meeting where you can see multiple residents worried about just the simple like the deleterious effects of this, dredging. So they're getting so much pushback and concern from Coos Bay. Above that is the port information or the project information. And then higher up, I put the minutes of that actual meeting. So anyway, there's a lot there that we can work with. And yeah, I fully agree. We need to make this a big priority. Go ahead, Thea.
So whatever you do or whoever does it, it should definitely be put in writing because
Yes,
a conversation can't be denied.
right.
And I think you should also, when the letter gets written to the city, point out that you were trying to address some of our unhoused issues with this, and they ignored your points.
Right.
So that the city knows, look, we acknowledge this. This is,
Yeah. Good. Good point.
and the railroad is hard to pin down. When I used to deal with the railroad police, they're really hard to pin down. And there was one guy that worked from Washington to LA. So, it's,
Oh,
yeah, they're really hard to pin down. So you got to keep writing names down and keep tracking who you're talking to.
And I just wrote in the chat, it's the link to Val Hoyle's email form. If you want anything you write, you may as well put in at the state level.
oh, thank you. That's great. I'll keep that. That's great. Yeah, let's avail ourselves of these voices and people that hopefully will listen. Yeah, it just has such broad impacts, and it's amazing. It's moving forward so fast. Okay, let's see. We are. Oh, one more. Let's see. Go. Oh,
I just wanted to say when you attack a problem as large as this, it's real important to surveil the territory. As the quiet zone, we identified the crossing gates, identify what the proposal is, and then in the same hand, identify specifically what the issues are. So if a committee or someone could get that together to articulate what you're bringing, because it looks like we're on a short track, pardon the pun,
yeah.
on this matter. So anyway, I just wanted to add that surveil what the issue is and get it in a concise wording that, and then also identify what are foreseen as the issues. And if possible, write in a third component in that letter, what you can see as probable solutions for it.
Thank you.
And just another
Oh.
fun fact that all city
Yeah.
emails follow the naming convention of first initial, last name at ci.Eugene. And so if there's anyone in particular that you want to reach, you can figure out their email that way.
Thank you. Guys,
And I
I
did put the address for every city employee. It goes to every city employee. It's in the chat.
that's
But that
awesome.
also gets funneled too. So if you want to ping someone individually, but that's a good one too.
That is a really good one. Yeah. Why don't we take this last time? I was going to dive into this land use and zoning, but why don't we table this for the next meeting? And just with our last minutes here, is there anything we would like to focus on for next month, or any concerns or things we want to bring up, or just keep on track? Again, no pun. Go ahead, Janet.
Graffiti.
Graffiti.
Graffiti, let's get it out. It's just so bad. And I'd like to see more of the mural, the scenic paintings. So, if we get art in the park or whatever, I'd like to see more mural like settings and not this jagged arrows and it seems to hype up. When I go to a park, I like it to be peaceful, kind of calming. I don't want to see big tigers and uh kaboom, kazam stuff. And I can think of no better example of the non-example as that Eugene Beauty College, that purple thing that they painted there, just to me incites violence or antisocial behaviors. So I'd like to see that some rubric presented to clean up the graffiti and to replace it and be clear with what your expectations are and replacing that kind of art.
We may be able to work with the Eugene Mission team to kind of cover up graffiti. So I'll look into that with the city and see what that's about. Jen, you were next.
Yeah, I just haven't asked. So the community organizations active in disaster for the county, I fell back in my lap a little bit. And so
Wow.
not except for we'll talk about it in a non-public meeting.
Okay. Okay.
But I am going to try to pull together a Eugene Springfield area meeting in like either late February or early March. Dorian, I'd like either like to talk about it a little here, try to get you guys as associate members or us guys for the co-ed, and then just also like I know you're in that world here, and so basically, can you help me because instead of having 7 months to do this, I now have 3 weeks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. Let's do that. Okay.
I wasn't sure, like, yeah, if you have one of the things, any of the events planned or any of that stuff, something to piggyback on, any of that would, yeah.
Let's do coffee next week or something, and we'll think tank. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Julie, go ahead.
Doriander, I know you've been working really, really hard on this Healthy Homes grant, and so perhaps this is outside of our bandwidth, but it is not too soon to talk about another disaster resiliency event. I'm sorry to bring that up because, boy, if you talk about something, you should probably be ready to put some time into it, and I do not have resources at the moment or limited resources, but just kind of throwing that out there on our radar. I don't have any specific demands or thoughts.
Okay.
Joanna has offered to do some radio training. And I don't know if that's a separate event or a similar or part of that. We have done some radio training briefly at our disaster resiliency events. Maybe I'd like to see that as its own standalone event if we can get the attendance anyway, because it's more than just, over or whatever. And Jenna, I have to disagree with you. I don't like all the art in the park. Not all that art speaks to me. I don't think you're wrong about the impact of colors and shapes, but I really dislike the idea of telling artists that we are controlling what they do. I don't love that. So I don't know that it's up to us as the Public Health and Safety Committee. But
I'm not suggesting telling an artist what to do. I'm just suggesting
you're saying set some guidelines. You're saying control what they do.
No, I'm suggesting that the rubric or the that there is a rubric or an expectation of what that art is, and if an artist can come
that's
forward,
telling someone what to do. That is telling someone what to do, Janet.
Not when it's a public domain, and I don't know. I don't feel that more of this jaggedy graffiti junk is. We need more of that. I'd like to see more alternative. It's the same old, same old. It's the same stuff over and over and over. It's time to change it up and give a little bit broader.
Hold on. So this was my speak. I hear what you're saying. And I agree. I don't love all of it, but I don't have to like the art for it to be valid art. That's it. let's get Travis a chance to talk before we're done. I know we're almost at the end.
I just wanted to touch base about the specific piece that Janet referred to. I know quite a few of us in the community were in touch with Eugene Beauty Supply over the years, where they were targeted with actually vile graffiti, sometimes racist graffiti, sometimes violent words on their, on their building on Fifth there on Lawrence. And we went round and round. Thea ended up connecting us with the city's business liaison, and they came to some sort of kind of backdoor agreement with a volunteer who works with who often works with different nonprofit groups to do free art pieces, which the owner of the building was on board for. However, the art that went on the Eugene Beauty Supplies building was not clear. That wasn't cleared with the business owner, and it wasn't really agreed upon. In fact, the owner herself can't stand the color purple, and there's a whole lot of purple across that wall. The only reason why I think that what Janet says has total validity is that the reaction by getting this wall painted was to curb the really, really negative graffiti going on her business over and over and over across years periods of time. And what she got in the end is a piece of art that is hostile. It looks like a nightmare scene. There's a universally accepted creepy ass clown that does not look like it comes in Goodwill. And it's got kind of a dark Halloween theme. It was painted right before Halloween. And it's not liked by the business owner herself. So that being said, I do think we need to address the whole issue of graffiti and the city's lackluster response to a complaint that we issued as a community. Many people, including other neighbors and business owners of that area, and that was their response, is to get a free muralist that got to just kind of decide what they did. That's not really a solution when the business owner herself can't stand looking at it. So anyways, that's my piece.
Thank you.
I know we're over time, Travis, you're right. If the building owner doesn't like it, then that's an issue. If it's my building, then I should be able to have what I want on it. I hate that piece of art too. Janet, I didn't know where you were referring to. Travis, you helped me.
Mhm.
I still don't think the WCC should get to decide, or the city.
I don't even like the columns, how they're painted down there. I think it should be more generic, where a broad band of people can appreciate it, instead of those few
Janet,
that live
Janet, we're
on
over
the
time,
edge.
and
Yeah.
Jen's got her hand up. Just
I'm
saying.
done.
Go
I'm
ahead,
done.
Jen, and then we'll close out.
I just wanted to say, so a friend of mine is the person who painted the box on Washington and Jefferson with the chickens and stuff like that. And she got so much bad feedback, and her intentions were not to be hostile, but it's kind of like a little hobo, and it just got tagged. And so I think that, like, I think we all could agree that the creepy clown is a creepy clown, and that there are some things that, like, maybe we should try to encourage. But I would also just really ask that, like, we try to respect the differences of artistic interpretation and style, and the effort that people do put into these things. Even if we don't, I used to live right by the big red tiger painting, and that wall was real red, let me tell you. It was very red, and I didn't love it, but it was better than it being really gray, or I'd like to think so. And there certainly was less racist graffiti on it afterwards. So I think just trying to bring our, like, most generous and open eyes, and then try to also find good matches for opportunities for artists and for the environment and for the people, so just trying to positive reframe it a little.
Indeed. Excellent opinions and advice and guidance. Thank you all so much. It's just amazing to be doing such good work with y'all. So have a great rest of your night, and we'll get these topics on the next meeting. I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Bye.